It's a good day for me to be listening to the show because I've had allergies and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out where my allergies are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought if I listen to you guys, maybe I get some help.
Okay, well, sit back, relax, and listen. We'll see if we can help you. So, today we launch our new series, Spiritual Self Help Legends. There's such a plethora of these icons that have been our teachers directly and at a distance, and for many of you listening for so many decades, so many people that have put their own lives and personal teachings into books that have helped and rippled out to help millions of other people. And so today we are going to start with the one and only Louise Hay, the Queen of New Age. So, known as the Queen of the New Age, that's just one moniker. Louise Hay was a publishing icon and a founder of Hay House, a best selling author, a shapeshifter in the healing arena. And having endured a very tumultuous early life herself, she transmuted her own experience of trauma and health challenges into a new paradigm to heal, helping people, pardon me, get rid of the frogs in their throat, build a bridge between their physical ailments and their emotions. So today we're going to discuss Louise's legacy and the connection between mind and body health and offer some tips to create a new language between what your body's trying to tell you in the name of healing. When's the first time you learned about Louise? Do you remember?
It was a long time ago. Um, I thought of that this morning, probably, wow, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually shocked and thrilled. I was shocked. I was shocked and thrilled. I was shocked and thrilled that somebody had written a book about the impact of emotions on health
Mm-hmm.
because I had always felt that way.
Yeah.
I always knew that we lived in one system, a mind and a body integrated.
Mm-hmm.
But even to this day, people don't believe that. They divide it up. Something is physical, something is mental or emotional.
And conventional medicine certainly likes to keep those things separate or has been founded on keeping those things separate. I was thinking the other day about how when I was a kid, my mother, so this is back in the 70s, in my formative years, 60s and 70s, my mother would always, if I wanted to like be home from school or, feign having a cold or a fever or something, she'd say, visualize the white light and get your butt to school. And really like never allowed us, because I was never, thankfully, a sick kid, wasn't, not able to, not enabled to stay home from school, but also learned that sort of a concept, which at the time was very woo-woo and airy-fairy and more just entertaining. I didn't really understand it at all, but it had to do with visualizing. And really starting to get more in touch with the fact that, like you said, our minds and our bodies are connected in ways that we're not typically taught. So, to me, that's something now. It's becoming way more trendy, and integrative medicine and functional medicine have certainly embraced it. If you go back to some of the other ancient, not even healing traditions in places like India with Ayurvedic medicine, China with traditional Chinese medicine, they've known this for 5,500 years, or at least 5,000 plus years.
It's kind of obvious
Mm-hmm.
that,
It feels it, right?
right? There's a mind in the temple, there's a body in the temple, and it's quite obvious to most people. But Western medicine, I think, and I'm not against Western medicine in any way, but it has become so technical
Yeah.
and scientific that it kind of zooms in on things and sees like the life of the cells at such a deep level that it forgets the impact and the importance of the mind and the emotions in creating health and wellness or disease.
Yeah, it is. It's It is amazing. Once you get sort of into this train of thinking, or you have worked in this area to heal something and have seen it and the reality and the gravity of how helpful it can be, it still is. It's a concept, but it feels like now, and on the other side of it, because it's such a big part of my belief system and my experience, that it's amazing to think that we are still so late to this party. It's. I mean, one simple way to introduce this concept to people that are listening that might not be familiar with it is, even when you're experiencing an emotion or you're having a difficult conversation, if you pay attention to your body, you usually feel it around your heart or in your stomach, right? Those are two of the more popular places to feel tension or discomfort or confrontational, discomfort. I have a very dear friend that often, when she's talking about things that are uncomfortable, um, says, right now my chest is tightening up, or my throat is tightening up, or my stomach's tightening up, and I don't want to talk about it anymore. But it's your body. Our bodies speak to us.
It sounds like my childhood,
Which part?
all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was always contracting.
Yeah.
Things would hurt. My the atmosphere hurt me. It's like the general atmosphere of my family hurt my body.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember hiding because I didn't want to feel those things,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Same. I don't know. I still don't know that I'm in touch with how much my childhood trauma has impacted my body, because and I don't believe in jinxing, so I think, because I can talk about this openly. But I've always been very lucky with my health, and we all have our things and different things you have to keep an eye on, certainly. And we'll talk more specifically about some of ours and what we've done to form some more relationships with the emotion behind some of our stuff. I'm a little bit deeper into the show. But I was even thinking, I was wondering where just even in the last 2 days, where some of the things that I still deal with from my childhood, where they do manifest in my body. And is it the reason that I am an overthinker? Not that that's like a physical ailment in and of itself, but it's just, it's interesting when you start even just making space to consider this concept, what starts to come.
Absolutely. There's a lot of material there for everybody, right?
There is, it's true.
We're thinkers and feelers,
Yeah, that's true. Or both.
right?
Or neither. I don't know if there's neither.
I don't know, maybe.
Um, so, beloved Louise Hay lived, we're not going to go through the total expanse of her personal story and biography, but, she came from, she had a tough upbringing and a very tumultuous childhood, and went out on her own, was the victim of abuse as a child, and as she got older, as a young woman, was pregnant as a teenager, and then later on had a cancer diagnosis, cervical cancer diagnosis, that really was the first time that a lot of her beliefs and experience in this conceptually was put to the test, where she really got in touch with her own physicality, and where that, how her emotional state manifested in that way.
Yeah, I wanted to say that when you read self-help books, it's often the case that people go through some kind of crisis.
Yeah.
And through that crisis, in a way, as a way of healing, as a way of transcending, they realize something about human life. And what they realize that realization becomes books,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I've read over and over and over the certain crisis that a person would go through, and all of a sudden they became an expert in a new field.
It really is. And that speaks to, even, we talk about this a lot on the show in different capacities, that whatever faces you that seems like that is, and gives the appearance of being a horrible tragedy or challenge, or takes you off course, and certainly is in the moment, always has greater learning for us. But when you're dealing with things, especially your health or great catastrophes, it's very hard to be in that space in that moment.
Right.
So, but she was really the probably the first person to put all of this, on the map, at least in the United States, and created her first book, which was You Can Heal Your Life, became the first kind of seminal book about forming a relationship and creating some knowledge around different body parts and what the emotional piece was behind it, and affirmations to sort of retrain your brain and your thinking to,
You know,
empower yourself more
you know how many
specifically.
years ago that was?
I don't remember actually. Was it in the
Oh,
80s?
huh. Well, as you talk, I'll look it up.
Thank you. You're hired as the researcher. I do want to say we would love to hear from if anybody wants to call in, share any thoughts on the matter, any experiences they have with bridging the gap between their emotionality and their health, or just any way in which Louise Hay might have inspired you. We'd love to hear from you. The number is 816-251-3555. Give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. So let's talk a little bit more about just the idea of the word psychosomatic. Oh, did you look up the book? The year was it?
1984.
What was it? 84?
1984,
Right. Okay. That feels familiar. I did have
doesn't
that
it?
number loosely in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So, in some ways, when we were talking about the show during our meeting, you brought up the word psychosomatic.
I did.
And historically, at least my association with the word psychosomatic, I think of like an old Woody Allen. Maybe that's not the greatest reference nowadays, but I think of like, Woody Allen or Woody Allen movie, right? Where there
Yeah.
was like a neuroses around something that really didn't exist, but you kind of made it into, some hypochondriac. Is that the word? Hypochondriac,
Yeah.
sort of issue or ailment that really didn't exist because your mind was just imagining it, right? Or creating something that really wasn't there. But in more literal terms, that's not really the case, right? It's more about how there's a emotional component to any sort of physical ailment.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's a big subject. And I think I told you that from some of my readings, I found out, and I've known this for many, many years, 90% of doctor visits have a psychosomatic component.
It's really an astonishing number. It's pretty high. It's much higher than I would have ever guessed,
Right?
you know?
When do, listen, this is another very interesting fact. When do heart attacks occur?
Um,
I've
the,
stumped you.
the day after Christmas or early in the morning or one of those answers
Monday morning,
when people are thinking about work.
the week ahead,
Mm-hmm.
the pressure's ahead. Most heart attacks happen on Monday morning,
That's really wild.
isn't it?
Yeah, to think about.
If you tell a research subject that you're going to give them a leaf, and the leaf is poison ivy, and since they're research subject, they're going to touch it. The people who touch a leaf that's not poison ivy get poison ivy. Not always, but more often than not.
Where are they getting it from if it's a whole placebo situation? Their mind is really creating that reaction. That one I haven't heard before.
Yeah,
That's really wild. I mean, it is such a testament to the power of the mind, and just how much we can create that works against us, and
right.
how it would be encouraged to work with that same energy to work in our favor more often on every level in our lives,
In
right?
every level, right?
Right, because we're better at doing it toward the negative than we are toward the positive, right? On
It's a
balance,
lot easier.
it's more of our conditioning.
So psychosomatic just
Mm-hmm.
means that the
Mm-hmm.
psyche is that the body somatic, soma, is influenced in a powerful way by the mind.
And still, and also somatic therapy. That word has become a lot more mainstream. That style, that modality has become a lot more pervasive because of how much we hold in our bodies and how
Right.
powerful and helpful it is to many people. I know people whose lives have been changed by it. I've thought about it over the years, and then I wonder if I resonate with it the same way I do other versions of therapy. But it's just really interesting how if you break all this stuff down and you remember that it is all one big unit. This body of ours that we walk on earth with is all one unit, and it's not disconnected. I mean, there's so much more, again, like with integrative medicine and functional medicine, especially, there's much more of a focus on the gut, and the gut being your primary brain, your gut being your primary home of neurology. That's not something people think about neurology, they think about it happening in their head. And now there's so much more research and so much more work being done around the power of a healthy gut to impact every part of our health.
And you see, so they have found neurons in the gut, they have
Mm-hmm.
found neurons in the heart, about 40,000 of them. And there are obviously billions of neurons in the brain. But they say that the heart affects the brain 10 times more powerfully than the brain affects the heart.
Beautiful.
Right. And
Greg Braden, go ahead. I'm sorry.
and you could say that probably the same thing. I think Deepak talked about this first,
Mm-hmm.
that when you say you have a gut reaction, it's the
It's
gut with the
literal.
brain that's doing that and telling you, I don't know if this is right or wrong. I'm having a reaction to it.
There's also Greg Braden, who can't remember what his title would be. I mean, he kind of travels in all the personal
Yeah.
growth circles, but he's also a scientist or has a scientific or neuroscience background. Sorry, Greg, if I'm butchering your resume. I've seen him at retreats, and I've followed him on and off for years. But he's spoken so much about the power of sort of heart energy and emotional energy and how measurable that is. Also, how there are how that can change like the collective consciousness by measurable versions of like our feelings, and how what we're holding in our heart can actually help and change our being
Right.
collectively, like on the planet, not just for ourselves. Um, what else do we want to talk about? The common ailments that are often associated with a psychosomatic component. And there are a huge list of them, but the ones that we have found are the most universal are things like insomnia, back issues, pressure issues, breathing issues, definitely indigestion, but also stomach issues that are so often chalked up to IBS. And some would say that IBS is a crock and doesn't even exist because there's deeper gut issues to be paid attention to. Migraines, erectile dysfunction, respiratory issues, pelvic pain, dermatological issues, ulcers, all of them.
Autoimmune
Hmm.
diseases,
Yeah.
which we're plagued with these days.
Yeah. Why do you think that they're becoming so much more common? And the bottom line of autoimmune diseases when your immune system starts attacking itself.
Right.
Why do you think it's become so much more pervasive?
Well, I see it's more the way I've always spoken about it is that autoimmune diseases really come from an overutilized immune system. The immune system is overutilized because we're reactive. We're reacting so much to everything. We're under tremendous stress.
Yeah.
And that tremendous stress creates that fight or flight response, which puts a lot of toxins into the body. And over time, we get into this kind of ongoing fight or flight response. Every time we watch the news, every time we hear about another COVID case, and that causes an overutilization of, I'm getting technical, an overutilization of the immune function, which causes a breakdown in how the immune system works. And you get a lot of the autoimmune diseases.
Which is why stress management and trauma work, for example, cannot
Right.
be, the need for those cannot be overstated. And the need for stress management cannot be overstated because it really has a biochemical ripple
Right.
effect on how it impacts our health and our bodies. The other thing I wanted to say too is that we don't present the show in any way to suggest that any of this is easy. You know, I mean, there's so many people that have dealt or are dealing with very sobering and challenging health situations, and often when they're posed with these kinds of concepts, when they're in the thrust of going through whatever they're going through, it's like, what did I do wrong? What am I not?
Mhm.
How am I not maneuvering my cellular makeup? What mood should I be in? What thoughts can I bring? You know, I don't feel like I have control. It's all on me, and that's just so much pressure and responsibility for anybody to put on themselves. So we just want to be sensitive to the fact that it's not as simple as, oh, notice that this is hurting you and then change your thoughts. You know, it's really a deep
No.
process, and there's lots of other factors involved, which I am not equipped or qualified to talk about. You might be able to say a little bit more about that.
Well, I do want to say that we're all challenged.
Yeah.
I mean, the point of spiritually speaking, the point of being here is to be challenged. And some people, a few, do well with challenges. Most of us don't do that well with challenges. But every time we're challenged, the body is going to react in a certain way, whether it was what I talked about, the fight or flight response, the stimulation of the amygdala. So we begin to see fears everywhere, right? That challenge creates inflammation. We suffer from a lot of inflammation in this culture. And so all of those challenges, which are there for good reason often, to make us better people, to make us rise to the occasion, to develop our character, but are also challenging the body. And so if we have challenges and we don't rise to the occasion, it builds up over time.
The other thing too, I think that before we start breaking down some more specifics about things that we've gone through and experienced, and some of the what's in the actual sort of dictionary section of Louise's books, is that um, it's just it's it's helpful and it's important to just sort of acknowledge that this modality exists. It doesn't mean that it has to live on its own. It doesn't mean that we're suggesting that it's the only way to go. You know, you have to find, I think one of the biggest pieces of all this when someone's going through something that needs healing is that it's really important to listen to your own voice deeply. I've been around so many healers in my work, in my personal interest, and also around the work that I've done in my TV and digital media career for so long. And I'm thinking about one healer who's now a pretty famous dude. And this was a smaller event in New York City a bunch of years ago, and there was a woman who was just starting to deal with her cancer therapy, and she was very conflicted about her inner voice, which was telling her to go fully alternative, and all her doctors and her family and loved ones telling her to go the more conventional route. And she was deeply conflicted, on top of being sick and having to deal with that. And the message to her was to listen to whatever, worked for her and whatever resonated, because often that's where these illnesses come from in the first place, to one degree or another, is when we are out of alignment with ourselves, or when we're working against ourselves, or when we're not listening to what is in flow for ourselves. So
We've
important to,
all,
yeah.
we've all heard the word a million times,
Mm-hmm.
dis-ease,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right? So it starts with dis-ease, challenge, obstacles, all tension, all that stuff can lead to situations in the body.
So on that note, we are honoring Louise Hay today in our new series, Spiritual Self Help Legends. And we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more specifically about some ailments and issues Steve and I have both endured, what we've learned, what we're still learning, and how we can hopefully help you. We'll be right back. Welcome back, dear friends, to One Soul Radio here on Unity Online Radio. We have launched our series, Spiritual Self-Help Legends, and today we are honoring the Queen of the New Age, Louise Hay, and I hope that she feels honored by that moniker. I know that can sound a little, you know,
I
the
thought you were
Queen of
talking about
Soul.
I thought you were talking about Beyonce, but go
Right,
ahead.
exactly. I know it can sound a little like that. So as I'm reading it back, I'm thinking, Louise, I hope you're happy with the way we're talking about you today. Um, so we've talked about just sort of the concept of the mind-body connection and overarching ideas about health and what Louise put on the map so importantly, especially in this country, which is the idea that there are emotions behind every single physical ailment and illness that we humans experience, right? Her seminal book was "You Can Heal Your Life." She wrote a lot of books. I don't have all the titles right here in front of me. "Heal Your Body A to Z," how our body gives us signals about the emotional state that we're in, and they kind of have sections that serve as almost like a dictionary, very ready made, where you can look up what's going on with you in a particular part of your body, what it means from a spiritual emotional perspective, and then enjoy an affirmation that helps you to sort of reframe and get in touch with whatever it is you're emotionally and spiritually depriving yourself up that might have contributed to that ailment or illness in the first place. So, should we talk about some of our fun and fabulous
Yeah,
ailments over the
it's
years?
it scares me a little
What scares you to talk about
talking
it?
about my allergies.
Why does it scare you?
My allergies have been pretty persistent. Um, I think when did I? Maybe 12 years ago, I got allergies.
Oh, I didn't
Maybe,
realize it was that recent. I didn't know that.
wait a minute. You know, when I got allergy, I think I was allergic to my ex-wife.
She'll be calling in momentarily, by the way.
I think after we separated, I got my allergies.
Interesting.
I didn't get them while we were together. Well, maybe I didn't, but certainly they were very strong afterwards because I was repressing a lot of feelings all the time. And so it had to come out of my body through sneezing, coughing, all kinds of shit. Oh, all kinds of stuff.
We'll bleep you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we won't bleep you live because we don't have a delay. Sorry about that, Jeff. That
Okay.
might be our first curse word in over a year. I know
I
I've
know
wanted to
it's
curse
pretty
plenty
good,
of
right?
times, but I always, I'm a really good cursor, but I managed to control it. So that might have been
I,
the first one.
you really have.
Yeah.
So, one of the things they talk about in terms of allergic reactions is that it's the body's resistance to substances, emotions, and other energies. And so, right now, I'm resistant to certain trees in my neighborhood. And so, I don't know why, because I do love trees,
Yeah.
but in my test, it said I was allergic to certain trees. And so in the morning now on my hike, I talk to the trees to try to receive them. And I really am doing this,
I believe you. I know you do.
try to receive them into my body. So I'm not
Mm.
resisting them. I'm trying to be friends with them.
Do you know which ones? But it's not like you had any reactions where your body was like telling you certain ones
That
are not
if I
jiving.
get close to a certain tree, the Geiger counter.
Yeah, right. But that is, that's a nice way to make friends with them before you really get an real reaction. So, you want me to remind you of some of the things that Louise talks about in the dictionary when it comes to
I,
allergies, or would you like
I,
to?
I guess so.
So, allergies means that you deny your own. Again, these are all these you have to
I, I,
see what applies, right? They're not all completely universal.
I'm
But
holding
that
my ears. Go ahead.
we deny our own power.
Yeah.
We are allergic to certain situations or people or things that are not aligned for us. Often it's internal versus environmental, or an indication of feeling annoyed, aggravated by others, blaming others for your situation,
I
being
did that.
over critical of yourself. Do you want to just keep checking the boxes? Overcritical of yourself and others, lacking boundaries, emotional congestion.
I'm having a sip of whiskey at the moment.
I know you relate to those because we read this together, right? So those, they might not resonate for you now,
Well,
but
they're all things that I've experienced in my life.
mm-hmm,
So every box is checked.
mm-hmm,
And so if I'm thinking about this going back to my marriage, my first marriage, I would say that all of those things were operative. And I think we both were in very egotistical positions with one another.
yeah.
And that egotistical position is very, very resistant and not open to things that are going on that probably should be resolved. So no wonder I'm sneezing.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting though, especially if you're aware of it more looking backward, looking back in the rearview mirror, because I know during that time you weren't accessing this information or using
Right.
it for your healing process, right?
No.
And so here's the reframe that's offered for people with allergies, if any of this connects for you, is an affirmation: I am one with all of life. I am safe at all times.
Wow.
Repeat after me. I am one with all of life.
I am one with all of life.
I am safe at all times.
I am safe at all times.
You are now healed.
Well, it's very interesting because that affirmation is the one I do these days.
Which one, the safe one or the one with
I
life?
am one with all of life.
Wow.
And I am open to all of life. And that's what I say when I'm on my journey with the trees.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love hearing all your little daily practice mentions. They always tickle me. Um, so I'm thinking before I go into one that I have more to say about because we did a little bit more research around it, I'm thinking back to even uh, 12, 15 years ago ish. I was having really bad lower back pain. My back was going out on me, and I was, how old am I now? So I was in my probably, around early 40s, maybe.
Mhm.
And it had happened maybe in my 20s once or
Yeah.
twice. Um, and I'm going to gather to think, because now I know more about back pain. And there's a great book. Is it Sarno?
I
Is it
know
Dr.
what.
Sarno? Am I
Yeah.
mispronouncing? And it's really one of the first books, like really progressive book about the ties between your back pain and emotions.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of it at the time. I was completely clueless. All I knew is my back really was not functioning. I was in such deep pain and so immobilized, and the way my body was operating was just completely off. And I remember thinking to myself, holy cow, this might be really how I am going forward, and having a moment of resignation about that, because whatever treatment or that I was going for wasn't helping. Thankfully, that has not been the case since, and my back is for the most part in very good shape, I'm happy to say. And here's the other thing that I actually haven't sorted out as I'm just sort of talking about this, is that because back often has to do with your money. Different parts of your back represent different things. But your lower back often has to do with money and sort of your sustenance, your structure, your foundation, the thing that keeps you grounded and together. And if I look back now, I think that was really, really relevant to me then. But I've also had issues with money or scarcity since, and thankfully my back starts speaking sometimes, but not to the degree that it did. So again, there's nuances to all of this. The example I wanted to give that's more current for me, but thankfully also at bay, and I do think that my Louise Hay work around this has helped, is nodules that I have on my thyroid that I've had and watched for many years, and mostly have meant nothing. I've just kept an eye on them and monitored or whatever. But in the last year and a half, have required that I get biopsies, and there's been some uncertainty about what's happening in there, we don't have to go into all the details about me and my thyroid, but thyroid science is very imprecise in some ways, in that often they don't know based on a test or biopsy what's going on until they actually see a problem and remove, a lobe of your thyroid, which I was very against. So what I started doing is paying more attention to what it represents. And your thyroid is obviously, sort of at the base of your throat. We're going to talk about your chakra systems if we have time today as well, and how different energy systems are equated to different parts of your body and different emotionality as well. But I knew enough to know that it was attached to, obviously, that area, which is communication oriented and finding your voice. Thyroid is about self-expression, personal power. An underactive thyroid is more about emotional, like heaviness and stuckness and depression, and means, in Louise Hay's language, a level of humiliation and frustration. When is it going to be my turn? I never get to do what I want. I have no right to apply my creativity to succeed. And I relate to those things really deeply, as much as I hate to admit it, because I don't like it to be true, but it is. And so I have to really, I spent a lot of time, as you've often talked about, is picking whatever your issues are and loving them. The things you think you'd love the least, loving your problems, loving your challenges, loving parts of your body that are not well. I started to send extra love to my thyroid. I started to talk to it more regularly inside of my meditations. And I started to really change my behavior and be much more intent on using my voice, even though I've always been a loudmouth. So a lot of people would never know this about me. But I wasn't using my voice in ways to support me more fully, creatively, professionally, whatever it would be, in relationships, all of it. So I started to pay more attention to that. And the reframe, per Louise Hay, is I love my glands. My self-expression begins here. With my unique approach to life, I am a unique individual. Deep inside, I allow the goodness to flow through me that expresses itself, and I have the courage to go for my dreams. And this is all extremely relevant to me and where I've been in my life for a while now. But I noticed after I did that work that a lot of what the concerns were, and the way too many doctors and way too many ultrasounds and way too many biopsies I had. Finally, when I found the definitive doctor who I'm with now, there's actually nothing to worry about. And there's really not much to talk about, thankfully. And I don't know if that's just the perspective of a doctor, if that's the work I did around it. But it's really, I felt like it was more empowering for me to acknowledge this sort of energy and this sort of teaching as a way for me to feel like I had more control over my health, and something that could have potentially been scarier than it has to be. And I think that's another bottom line message here, is that a lot of people don't realize you can really take your health into your own hands on so many levels that, again, conventional medicine in this country doesn't tend to encourage us to remember.
Really true.
Right?
I have a question that I don't know if either of us can answer.
What's that?
How did she come up with these? Was this channeled information? Where did she come up with all of these very detailed understandings of physical emotional correlation? Do you know?
I would have to do a deeper dive, so I don't want to butcher our beloved Louise Hay's story. Right. I know that when she was finding herself finding her career path, I know that she was involved in certain, I don't know if they were groups. There might have been one that was a ministry or church-oriented group or a healing-oriented group, something to that effect, that definitely had this sort of belief system. I think that's where she was first exposed to it, but I don't know exactly where the depth of this information came from for her.
Very interesting.
And she also did heal her, she healed her own cancer. She healed herself.
Right. Maybe it was Church of Religious Science.
I don't know. If we had more, if we had more time, I would research it while you were talking, but I don't want to leave you alone for too long, because that's never a good idea.
Please don't, because I'll have an allergic reaction.
Shall we talk a little bit about the chakra system, since that's another thing that's so important, and again based in much more ancient. Was it originally Ayurvedic?
Uh,
or
I,
more like Vedic based? I don't know. I don't know the distinction.
honestly, I think the chakra system probably came out of Chinese medicine because the Chinese medicine uses the chakras in all the meridians for healing. So my assumption is that it may have come from various sources, but certainly Chinese medicine, which goes back 4 or 5 thousand years, has used that system.
So the chakras are energy systems inside of our bodies. There are 7 primary ones. There are lots more if you get more deeper into the weeds. Um, that kind of that are that start well. I'll go through each of them. I was going to say they sort of represent different regions of our bodies, different spiritual spiritual sort of representation of different parts of our spiritual evolution. They all live along the base of the spine, which is if you're looking for, from a Kundalini practice and you think about energy and your Kundalini rising up through your spine, the energy moves through each of these respective chakras. So the first one is your root chakra, which is at the very, very base, sort of your tailbone at the base of your spine, which again, I'm going to give you like the layman's terms and Steve can chime in with more details if you like. But the root chakra is really about your basic daily needs, sustenance, foundation, earthly needs, home, money.
Yeah, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Right.
right?
The one at the bottom of the pyramid.
Primary needs, root chakra.
Your sacral chakra, which is sort of in your pelvic region underneath your belly button, which represents your creativity, your sexuality. There's also, I should back up and say there's colors attached to each of these as well, right? So your root chakra is more of a red, deep red, some would say brown.
Yeah, these are the rays of light. So we're made of multiple rays of light, and each ray has a different frequency. And so from the bottom to the top, you're going from lower frequency to higher frequency. I will chime in next time.
Thank you. So back to the sacral, which is below your belly button, which is the color orange and represents your creativity and your sexuality. Your solar plexus, which is sort of right at your sternum, which is represented by the color yellow, and that one is your determination, right? Your will,
Relationship,
relationships,
right? So
and
that if we go back to this idea about the gut, you often feel your relationships in the gut area because that's where that third chakra is.
it's also almost middle way to your, some would say it's sort of the like the gateway or the bridge between your more basic foundational life. I'm struggling for my words today, but your like the foundational chakras that we just talked about, and then moving more into the emotional and spiritual chakras that I'm about to mention.
There you go.
Heart chakra, which is, everybody knows where that is, and that's represented by the color green. And clearly, again, if you think about when your chest feels tight, when you feel uncomfortable, when you're feeling an emotion, or when you're feeling overtaken with love, it's really important just to notice where that shows up, and often that shows up in your heart area.
And that
It's
heart chakra is considered the portal to your soul.
which is like why we like the idea of staying in our heart energy as much as possible, don't we?
Yeah. Right.
When we can. And then your throat chakra, which, as you know, I think everyone knows where their throat is represented by the color blue and is your communication port. Third eye, which falls in between your eyebrows, which is more of an indigo, right? Kind of midnight blue color, which represents your intuition.
And visionaries and prophets have a very open third eye.
I often, when I get acupuncture, I ask them to give me a little third eye needle, which is kind of fun. And then finally, your crown chakra, which is at the top of your head, which is reflected by the color white or the non color white, which is sort of your gateway to higher realms and spirituality.
Right.
So, again, I think it's interesting when if there are physical ailments that one is dealing with, and you can identify what part of your body or what chakra it's connected to, this could be another helpful tool to become aware. And often people will, either get like a crystal that is the corresponding color, or wear that color a lot. I have a dear friend who just went through thyroid surgery, and she was like head to toe blue as she went to the hospital with her outfit all blue and her
I love
blue
it.
crystals and the whole thing. And thankfully, she's doing amazingly well and
Good.
really handled it from a very deep spiritual perspective and empowering perspective as well. So yeah, some you could do visualizations with the colors, right? Just whatever works for you. But it's just interesting to have this knowledge because it can be extremely helpful, just as a new way to new perspective to have when you're trying to heal.
Perfect.
When's the last time you used one of your chakras?
I use them all the time.
In what way?
There was a point at which I started seeing auras. And so it actually happened about 5 years ago in my office. And my third eye would start vibrating, and I would start seeing a person's aura. But the problem was I got so interested in their auras and how they were changing, I stopped listening to what they were telling.
How did that work? So what did you do? How did that work for you when you're in the middle of a session?
Well, I pretended I heard them and I tried to answer, but over a period of a few months, I kind of acclimated to this new ability I had, and I started listening to what the people's problems were. Interesting, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that your clients appreciate that. So let's talk about our action steps, shall we? There are so many ways that, again, we would advise picking up any of these books, reading a little bit more about Louise Hay, picking up any of her books just to get yourself familiar with this kind of thinking. Number
Oh,
one,
yeah.
that's not an official action step, but
Right.
really, really powerful. There's also plenty of videos that live on, her Hay House, her publishing empire, which is, alive and well and supports some of the most amazing self-help writers and teachers. Can go on their website. And then there's plenty, videos that exist of Louise talking about all of these things as well. So we were trying to kind of reduce all these grand concepts into some action steps for you all today. So the first one is to take a physical ailment that you've been dealing with for a while and simply look it up in Louise Hay's book. Can either, like I think I said before, either you can heal your life or heal your body A to Z.
And
And
most of
just
it, by the way, Callie, is online, so you don't even have
that's
to
true. You
buy.
don't have to. Yeah, you don't even listen to me. I'm just trying to sell, helping Louise sell her books
Right.
in the other world. But just to take a minute and just become familiar with how this could potentially help you, and just sit with the information. Secondly, would be to take it a step further. What new information did you learn about the emotional component of your ailment? And maybe just journal about it. Write a few lines and just get familiar with whatever knowledge this might, be imparting on you. And then third would be to think about, if you want, to take it even a step further, do you want to work on this aspect of your life? Write down one or two things to start addressing the emotional piece of your physical issue, right? Yes.
Yes. Somebody from the audience wants to speak. So I want to emphasize the fact that when we don't resolve things in our mind, they tend to fall into our bodies. It can be the other way around, but that's how it occurs. And so the body is giving you a big signal that something needs to be addressed. Pain is a signal. Uncomfortableness is a signal. And when we look at these signals, we want to address them in a kind of a gentle way and figure out what they're trying to tell us. So there's a message from our body about our overall state of well-being.
Thank you for that. Such an important thing to remember. And again, that applies to both, anything that physically could be going on in your body or even just emotionally. And again, it could be a wake up call to spare you from something exacerbating and concretizing in your body as well. So if you're,
Absolutely.
if you're dealing with a person or a relationship or a job situation, or, whether it's a physical pain or just like a tension that you're feeling in your body, it's all your body's way of trying to speak to you. So just to repeat those action steps, take a physical ailment you've been dealing with for a while, look it up in Louise Hay's book and just sit with that information, see if it sparks anything for you. Second of all, what new information did you learn about that emotional component of your ailment? And then finally, think about if you'd like to work with this aspect of your life and write down a few things to get you started. So with that, we want to thank everybody for joining us. As always, we appreciate you. You can find us on Instagram at One Soul Radio and Facebook at One Soul Radio Podcast. And we will see you next week. Have a good week, everyone.